So today we're going to be looking at a tool called PlayerCTL, which is basically a generic media player control that works through MPRIS. So you can use this to control things like, say, Spotify D, or the official Spotify client, or Chromium, or Firefox. Basically, anything you'd expect to have hardware media key support is probably going to have empress support as well. Now, one exception is MPD, but you can get a wrapper called MPRIS 2, which does actually add in support for empress. And I think there's an addition for MPV as well that can also add that support as well. So you can do things like, say, PlayerCTL play, and if we go over to my MPD client, as you can see, the song is playing over here. I'm not going to actually play the audio for you though, because I don't want to get copyright struck. We can do PlayerCTL pause, and that will then pause the audio, or my preferred method when I'm actually using it for the hardware keys is play-pause, which is basically a toggle between play and pause. So as you can see, it's playing now. If we run it again, now it's actually going to be paused. But it's not really that simple, because let's say we have a video open in Brave right here, and then we try to run PlayerCTL again. So PlayerCTL play-pause, and as we're going to see, it doesn't actually start playing the music over in MPD here, but it does start playing the video, and that's because PlayerCTL is a generic tool, and it will run on the first thing that actually matches on. So if we run PlayerCTL list-all, as we can see, there's a Chromium instance here, and PlayerCTL goes by alphabetical order. So one way to fix this is to run PlayerCTL ignore-player, and then list out every single player that you want to ignore. But this isn't really a scalable solution, because let's say you have multiple players in here. You can obviously list them out as a comma-separated list, but if you have, say, 5 or 6 players in there, you probably don't want to do that. So as we can see, the song is playing now, and the video didn't start playing. So the better solution that I prefer to do is run PlayerCTL player and then pass in the player that I want to run it on. So in this case, I only want to run it on MPD, and then we can run play-pause again. And as we can see, that is now playing the song. So for the rest of the video, we'll be running PlayerCTL in this form right here, just to make sure that it always runs on the correct player. So one of the other options we have is the stop option. That basically will stop whatever song is currently playing. So next up we have next, which will skip to the next song, but because we're not actually playing a song, it doesn't know what playlist to actually skip next to. So we first have to start playing a song. As you can see, it's playing now, and then we can actually skip next, and it will skip to the next song in the playlist. And we can go in the other direction by doing previous, not prev. Prev doesn't actually work. And if we want to move through the song or to a timestamp in the song, we can use the position option. Now, this has to only be in seconds, so you can't say, I want to jump to, say, 3 minutes. That won't actually work. If you want to jump to 3 minutes, then you have to say, I want to jump to 180 seconds. So if we run that now, as you can see, we've jumped to that point. Or if we want to say, jump backwards or forwards, we can say, let's jump backwards by 90 seconds. That's taken us back to 1.5 minutes, or we can jump forwards by 90 seconds. That will take us to 3 minutes now. Depending on the player you're using and whether it actually supports this option, you should also be able to change the volume level. But as you can see, my volume inside of MPD is set to NA, so I don't know what's going on there, but if you want to go and use that option, it works very similar to the way that position works. So if we do volume and then say set the volume to 90, that will then set the volume to 90, but mine's not working. So if I use this with, say, Spotify, for example, that would be working just fine. We can also go and raise it and lower it by a certain amount as well by doing the same thing as position. So let's say 10 minus, that will lower it by 10, or 10 plus, that will raise it by 10. We can change the shuffle state of the player as well. I haven't tested this on YouTube, so I don't know if that will work there, but it does work fine inside of MPD. So shuffle on, that will turn shuffle on. We have this little Z symbol up here, which means that it's enabled. Or we can do shuffle off, which will then obviously turn it off. And capitalization isn't actually important, so even if you do, say, like, on in all capitals, that still will work just fine. So don't worry about how you actually spell it, as long as the word is actually spelt correctly. So you also have the ability to modify the loop status as well. So we have loop either none, which basically means turning off the looping. Looping for track, which will mean it will loop the track, or loop playlist, which obviously means it will loop the playlist. Another really useful option we have is the metadata option, which will let you print out the metadata of the player and also the song as well. So if we just run it like this with no arguments, as you can see, we have the name of the album, Deadbeats, we have the artist, Calliope Mori, we have where the song is actually located on my file system, and with this information, if we pass in the -F option or -- format, we can actually change how this is going to be formatted and how it's getting printed out. So if we pass in curly braces like this, we can actually pass in a variable name. So let's say we wanted the player name. Now that's not really that interesting. We can see the player name is MPD. But how about we wanted something like the status? So that will tell us whether it's paused or playing or whatever's actually going on with the player. Or how about we want the position in the song? So as you can see, this is going to be in milliseconds, but we can actually convert that over. And if we pass in the volume option, that will give us the volume, but as you can see, because it's not working, it says my volume is 0. But we can also use this to print some information out about the song as well, so anything that's listed in here can also be printed out, but some of them do have aliases as well, so if we pass in album instead of XSAM album, that will print out the album name, but both of them will work, so XESAM album, that prints out the same thing. However, depending on the player and the way they do their metadata, it may be named differently, so this isn't really going to be that generic. You sort of have to write this specifically for the player. So with this, we can also pass in some formatting functions as well. So let's say we wanted to, I don't know, take the album name, so the album name that we saw before, and then turn it into lowercase. So we can pass in the LC function, which is the lowercase function, and that will then make that lowercase. Or we can take the title and make that uppercase. So let's leave this one here and actually pass in a second set of curly braces. So you can put in as many as you want. You can even pass in like other things in between here as well. You don't actually have to just have the curly braces. So let's actually pass in the UC function, so that is the uppercase function, and then pass the title into that one. Now we have the title in uppercase and the album name in lowercase, or we can actually escape markup as well by using the markup escape option, and that will let you actually include XML markup in this output. Now, I don't really have a good example of this, but if you have anything that you want to include in here, this function will let you do that. If we happen to need an if-else statement, we can pass in the default option. So this one actually takes in 2 arguments, and what it basically does is says, okay, if the first one exists, print out the first one, but if it doesn't, then print out the second one. So let's say that we have, I don't know, some made-up variable just called var, and if that doesn't exist, then we're going to print out album. So this time, it's just going to print out the album name, as we can see here. Now, I showed you earlier that things like this one right here and also the position are in milliseconds, but if you want to go and convert that, which I recommend doing if you want to have it as a human readable output, you can pass it into the duration function. So let's say we pass in the position to that one. Now that's actually going to be converted into a human readable time format, so in this case 5 seconds. And with both volume and status, you can also pass it into the emoji function, and that basically converts it into like an emoji representation. So if we pass status into that, as we can see, we get a little pause sign here. Ignore the smiley face here, that's just Alacrity being weird with my font. But if the song is playing, for example, and we try it again, now we actually have a play symbol. So a productive use of this might look a little something like so, which is basically going to say the player name, the status of the player, and then show you where in the song you're actually up to. So if you want to show that in, say, your status bar or something like that, that's one way you can go about doing so. So as I said at the start of the video, you can use this to handle hardware media key support, but the way you're going to do so is really going to depend on what you're running. I'm using SXHKD, so pretty much all I do is just go to wherever I want to add them, and then just basically add in some bindings for them. That's all I really need to do. On my keyboard, F8 is for next, F6 is previous, F7 is play pause, F5 is stop. So it's going to depend on the keyboard layout you have as well. If you're using certain desktop environments, I know they handle the hardware keys just magically out of the box, but because I'm on a window manager, I had to do it myself. So if you want to add MPRIS support to MPD or MPV, I'll leave links down below so you can actually use this tool with them. But I've actually been using PlayerCTL for probably like 6 or 7 months at this point, and it's been an absolutely amazing tool, and really, I don't have anything negative to say about it. It works about as well as you'd expect it to. Any issues I have with it typically come from the player side because they just haven't really implemented their Empress support properly. If they implement it properly, PlayerCTL just works perfectly fine with them. So I think that's pretty much everything for me. But before I go, I would like to thank my supporters. So a special thank you to Joachim, Corbinian, Andrew, Craig, Nathan, Montazar, Chico Bento, Joseph, Peter D, Road, Tony, Brennan, Donald, John, Marek, Mikkel, Nate, Dog, Nephite, Tees, and Zilva. If you want to go and support my work, there'll be links down below to my Patreon, subscribe, start, leave, pay, all of that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available pretty much anywhere. And also, this channel's available on Library, Odyssey, BitChute, BitChute, those platforms if you want to watch on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and